Over the course of the next 14-ish minutes, I'm going to share with you what I've learned from a year of reading more nonfiction business and marketing books than ever before, and how you can read more of these books and more effectively use them to make positive changes in your professional and personal life. Essentially, how you can turn reading into action. And I guess I just wanted to say before I start that it's pretty nerve-wracking to share your thoughts on learning and reading, which is something that the majority of people do subconsciously. I guess for a fear that my proposed tactics for reading smarter might be quite obvious to some of you, and the all too common imposter syndrome of why anyone would be interested in how I read books. But it has been an amazing kind of 9 months for me for looking after the book club, and here we are, and I've been delighted to be able to read more books than ever. So to begin with, I have to caveat what I'm about to share by saying that I am the biggest fan of reading. I believe that it's not only a way to glean information and widen our knowledge on a certain subject, but it also provides an opportunity for meditation, contemplation, and escapism, things that obviously have been in quite short supply this year. So I am exclusively talking about non-fiction development books here. I'll always starkly defend the importance of carving out time to enjoy reading and escaping into different worlds. But for the purpose of business and work and problem solving, sometimes we do need to broaden our knowledge base and look for innovative ways of working quickly. UNESCO conducted a study in 2013 which showed that more than 2.2 million books were being published a year, which is all around the world, and that number is only growing. So my job and the Journey Further book club serves to go a little way to try and alleviate some of the stress of this age of abundant information that we live in. So over the last kind of, as I say, 10 months or so, I've had the opportunity to read 78 books. 21 of those have been fiction. That I just talked about, which leaves 57 books that I've read that have spun the topics of kind of self-development, mental health, leadership, communications, business, creativity, and problem solving, and all of the things that fall in between those topics. So how have I read this many books? Well, to be completely honest with you, if you're a completionist, I haven't read 57 books. Like many readers, I keep track of my reads on Goodreads, which is a terribly designed, terrible user experience platform, which I'm absolutely addicted to. You can create lists and bookshelves there of books you want to read and keep track of your kind of yearly total. But when I started to think about the books that I'd gained the most from this year, I couldn't see any of those reads on my good list shelves. And there's a point here about the desire to complete things and to do things in a certain way. I'm going to be sharing my 4 tips on how you can read a lot more of these business books. And that involves being smarter about the bits of the books that you do read, and approaching the learning process through a different lens, one of efficiency over achieving goals and numbers and figures to kind of tally up at the end of the year. So I want to revise what I said at the beginning about having read 57 business books this year to I've understood the core principles of 57 business books this year. So first things first, reading takes up a lot of time, and the average person reads around 200 words per minute. So you can improve that quite quickly if you read a lot and often, but let's say the average is 200 words per minute. Take a book then, a well-known commercial business book, like, for example, Deep Work. We're talking around 300 words a page, sorry. So if you're looking at a 263-page book like Deep Work and reading that at 200 words per minute, it would take you around 395 minutes or 6.5 hours to read that non-stop. Now, doing anything other than sleeping for 6.5 hours nonstop is pretty unattainable. So with distractions and rereads and pauses, you might be looking at kind of 7 to 8 hours to read Deep Work cover to cover. I recently read Deep Work in 2 hours. I loved it, and I've since used the insight from the book to create a deep work zone in my flat and to commit to an hour of undisturbed writing a day. So how have I done that? I got everything I needed to know from the book using these 4 tactics. Step 1, read only the first and last chapters, and it can save you around 4 to 6 hours per book. So Oh, let me just go back. You might say that's cheating, reading just the first and the last chapters. It is, but it also isn't. Any author worth their salt will write a compelling introduction. It's a sales tactic for the book. The introductory chapter is the reason that you're going to keep on reading. So it's where the premise of the book is laid out, the contents are explained, and it's where you can get a feel for the author's authority on the subject and the quality of the writing. Then you have the conclusion, which, when it's done well and edited well, should conclude the main points covered in the book, obviously. And it should also restate the overarching idea and how you can use it. And most importantly, explain any pitfalls that you should be aware of with the methodology presented. So when you have got less time than you would like to learn, but you're still committed to that, this is what all you need to know from the book and take it away with you. So I'll come back again to this idea that learning is a personal experience. And this is a tactic that I've had to kind of ease myself into. But I really feel that if you want to gain the key insights from any given book, that reading the first and the last chapters is a fantastic place to start. I should say that then if after reading those first and last chapters, you're excited by the book and the idea and the writing style, of course, do read the rest of it. But this is a great way to test out the material before committing to a full 8 hours of it. You've gained the knowledge of the book by reading the first and the last. And if it's not for you, you've saved yourself several hours. And if you still want to, you know you're going to read something that's of use to you. So you're going to read all of the key information in those first and last chapters. How can you then turn that information into something that resembles an action list? So my second tip is to be very clear on your objective. When you're going into the reading, you'll want to have a specific situation or problem that affects you in mind, what it is that you're trying to solve by reading this book. So it might be that you want to improve your leadership skills so as to better support a team member. It might be that you want to be better prepared next time there's a conflict at home or at work. So you want to work on your conflict resolution skills. You might have a burning desire to create something, but not really know where to start. Approaching the book with a clear objective on what your mission is, what your objective is that you'd like to solve, will help you to more robustly understand the words on the page and grasp the information that you're reading, and ultimately encourage the cogs in your brain to get moving, so you can figure out how it would apply to you. That leads me on to tactic number 3, which is come armed with a pencil. It is a bit controversial, and I know that in some of our book club chats we've chatted about this idea. Book purists are going to tell you that it's sacrilegious to draw on a book, and I used to feel the same way. I still would never ever write on a story or a work of fiction, but again, for the purpose of my learning and maximizing the amount I can learn, I found that I was able to comprehend much more when I underlined the keywords and sentences on a page, annotated the points I'd like to come back to, and even jotted down any ideas that I had that came to me whilst reading, so I could revisit them with ease afterwards. Write in the margins, let your mind wander. Where do you go to? This is an example of some of the notes that I made on Seth Godin's new book, The Practice. I knew that I was going to be, interviewing Seth. So I made points and notes on questions that I would want to come back to. And it made it much easier when I was then revisiting the text to work out what it was that I was interested to know more of from Seth. I should say, do make sure you do it in pencil, because you might just go up in flames if you write on a book in pen. That is a step too far. But underlining, annotating, jotting down ideas as you're reading will allow you to more concretely understand the words that you're reading and begin to create that action list that you'll then be able to apply to your own circumstances. By arriving with a pencil, you're prepared to come up with ideas, and your mind will be more willing to oblige. So finally, step 4 for turning your reading into into an action list is to write a summary. At the end of reading and annotating those 2 chapters, you should ideally be able to draw out 1 to 2 sentences on what the book is saying. Give yourself time immediately afterwards to do this. It's very easy to kind of finish up a book, finish a text you're reading and just close it and go on about with your day. But if you immediately after finishing reading kind of write down your conclusion, your personal conclusion of what the book is about and how the principles can be applied to your situation, you'll then be able to revisit it a little bit later when you've had time to think on it, and you'll be able to see really clearly what it is that you want to do on your objective. So you could also, if you don't fancy writing it down, you could also kind of create a little elevator pitch to tell a colleague why they should read the book, but you want to be doing something that can fit into about 30 seconds. And then the basis of that can then form your action list. So a quick example of this at work is Dan Heath's book, Upstream, which came out earlier this year. Dan is one of the Heath brothers who wrote the book The Power of Moments, and I read Upstream in February, made about 6 pages of A4, 6 pages of a Word document of notes, and then didn't touch it again for 6 months. And then back in September, I decided to revisit Upstream and applied my new tactic of reading just the first and last chapters. And here are the notes that I made. So on the left here, you can see a little snippet of the 6-page notes that I made. From this point downwards, it's just quotes that are copied verbatim from the text. And on the right, here is my kind of 45-second summary of what Upstream is about. And on first glance, you can see that there is detail missing on the right-hand side. But when you actually look at the key words that I've written, there is a much more concentration on those key points in my second summary. So actually, the remaining 5 pages of text, the quotes verbatim, weren't of much use to me. I was just probably writing them out to make myself feel like I was understanding the text. So the reason I picked up Upstream for a second time was because I was having a problem, and it was because I was finding myself falling behind on the books that I needed to read for our book club members. My to read pile was ever growing. I was in a really amazing position where I was getting sent new books every day, but I just couldn't really work out how I was ever going to catch up on my reading. And with that in mind, I decided to reread the first and last chapters of Upstream, which is a book about how you can reduce problems from occurring downstream by tackling the source upstream. And we can tend to overlook the bigger picture sometimes and instead focus on our personal objectives and goals. And for me, a goal has always been to read a book cover to cover and add it to my reading total on Goodreads, as I say, to get that buzz of adding to that total. And that is okay. It is natural to want to feel like we're achieving something. But in order to spend less of my time firefighting, I found that actually I could reframe the way that I was approaching learning from these books, and I'd be able to get through more of them. Effectively, I could change the way that I was reading. So I analysed what I'd done to glean the key info from Upstream, and that was the 4 tactics that I've shared with you today. These are my notes, kind of an example of my notes from Upstream. As you can see, lots of very bad drawings in the margins, but that's the way my mind works. But so those 4 tactics I shared with you today, they might not work for you, but I'd urge you to give them a go. And most importantly, to reframe the way that you view learning from books. You're not reading the books for anyone but yourself. So why read them in a way that suits other people more than it suits you? I would advise you to read the first and last chapter exclusively, come to those 2 chapters with a clear objective or problem in mind, bring a pencil and let the ideas flow, and summarize what the book was saying. You'll be able to see you kind of apply the concepts in more business and marketing books and see your personal and professional growth skyrocket. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Isabelle. That was great. I mean, I can say personally that you've encouraged me to read loads more this year than I've ever read before, I think. You've summarized things really well there, but I will press you for an extra 15 seconds. If you could sum up the message you want people to take away from your talk today at Clarity at Speed Live, how would you do it?
So I would say that you can be a more effective reader and get more from business and marketing books by only focusing on reading the first and last chapters, having a specific problem or scenario in mind whilst reading, making notes, and writing yourself a 1 to 2 sentence summary afterwards, which can form the focus for your action list on the problem that you're trying to solve, and then rinse and repeat.
There we are. And how can people join the Journey Further book club to find out more about all these business books which you speak about?
Absolutely. So you can get in touch with me anytime here on isabelle@journeyfurther.com. But the best way to find out what's going on with the book club is to sign up. It's free to join. There's a link there. We're at journeyfurther.com/book club. And you'll be joining a community of nearly 1,500 marketers, founders, and CEOs who all, like you, want to continue learning and tackling our industry's biggest problems and questions whilst developing personally. So yeah, check us out there on the website and find us on Twitter and LinkedIn, Instagram. We're on all of them. Just search for Journey Further and you'll find us there.